Hi, this is Mark. In this video, I'm going to talk about the best antidepressant treatment in my view. I believe attaining sunlight and exercise is pivotal to reversing or mitigating depression over time. And I've experienced this myself, going through dips since my early 20s. And I attribute it to, I experienced anxiety that persisted for 2 years. And before that point, I didn't experience you know, depression. And before that point, I was physically active. So of course, I ate more fast food. But I was able to process it. But it wasn't until the anxiety, which really depressed my whole nervous system and disrupted the equilibrium of my own body. I was I I started experiencing these dips, but it wasn't immediate. After the anxiety, actually things started getting better until I started noticing my digestive I started noticing digestive problems pop up, and it's almost as if my digestive system crashed. It was as if there was residual problems that kind of built up and eventually reached a tipping point, and my body was kind of had that imbalance, and as it extended too long, it just all reached this limit, and eventually everything kind of collapsed at that point. But it wasn't, of course, that's just a that's you can always improve. Just I've always, but the thing is, it's never been back to complete 100% normality. So I've still dealt with this some digestive problems, and my mood has seems to follow that pattern. So in terms of the state, depression is usually associated with pain, lethargy. Um, Even digestive problems, inflammation is associated with depression. Just the health status. You can think of depression as it's an issue with body's ability retain or to achieve or tend towards equilibrium, or it's also related to the health status of the body, the internal mechanisms that are have to be all connect. They're all connected in a chain, and if anything's offset, then it causes problems in other areas. But the thing is the body has an efficiency, which is usually maximized when you're very young, and you don't run into all these like problems when you're younger. Depression, usually comes. It depends on it depends on the situation, but depression usually hits a lot of times in the late teens to 20s when there's a lot of stress. Usually, these are the periods when especially during teenage years, you're going off on your own, and there's a lot of stress, and that can cause a disequilibrium. You got to think for every single event that if you have stress, it's causing like a break from the equilibrium. If you add the individual components and you add it all together and you put it, and basically eventually there's going to be a limit. You can always define a limit with any even disorder, like think of like schizophrenia or bipolar or any other disorder. There is a like I know they associate marijuana use with schizophrenia, and of course there has to be there has to exist. It's almost as if like you could have the disorder. You could be like it could be on the tipping point where you're about to have the symptoms of the disorder. It's not like the disorder usually has primordial symptoms, or it usually has symptoms that are very marginal that people don't notice, and you may still exhibit. You're tending towards that direction, and eventually it reaches a point when they diagnose you, and that's when the symptoms become severe enough that such that you notice it. So marijuana actually it's more of a potentiating agent. It could potentiate what's already exists underneath the surface, and therefore, maybe not necessarily be. So it's not like it. It's not like marijuana is the gonna be the complete cause. There's many variables into play. So, but it is a triggering agent, and so with depression, it's also like related to the status. And anytime you cause like disruptions, like if you drink a lot of alcohol, if you do a lot of drug use, you're causing all these shifts in energy. Law, conservation of energy is, we want to achieve balance. And if you were to live your life with no, just think of no, again, vacuum, you have no stress, you have good nourishment, no external variables that cause all these factors. Well, you could think of like you're not causing these shifts, and therefore not wasting, you're not offsetting the energy balance, and therefore creating all these potential conditions. So Depression is, one way it's attributed to many things like stress, anxiety, anything that depresses the status of the body. And also, depression is relative. It's relative to your current position, what you are used to. So, like if you consider a 90-year-old man or woman, they're going to have, and you translate that, you start feeling as if you're a 90-year-old man and woman. You're experiencing the same kind of state that they are in. Well, it's going to be a depressed state for you at 20 years old, for instance, because it's not normal. It's not normal for your back. You essentially have this. You could think of this normal boundary, or this like normal uh, functionality, and it's proportional to really like what has happened or transpired within um, a pretty recent or shorter time span. Because like usually when you get into depression, if you stay in there long enough, what you end up realizing is you acclimate to the conditions, and it becomes a new set point. And then you kind of forget what normality or what it used to be when you were back at the peak. It kind of dwindles away, and so therefore depression can be considered a relative. It's on a relative scale. We can't really quantify it exactly. So if someone says, oh, you need to have 5 symptoms or whatnot, I wouldn't focus on that, because the thing is with like even with testosterone therapy or hormone therapy, doctors may, if you have low hormone levels or low testosterone, low estrogen, for instance, and you don't meet the reference range, or you're not targeting inside the reference range, or suppose you're a little bit outside the below the baseline of the scale. What ends up happening is doctors may say, you don't need, hormone therapy, but if because they're like, like you're not. Some doctors will attribute it like you're not low enough or so forth, and but the actuality is you could have androgen insensitivity issues, and if you do, that means that even at the level that you have, it's much lower than someone else who has a much higher androgen sensitivity. So hormone levels and the symptoms that you experience are a function of androgen sensitivity. So the same with depression. It's like, it's based on just the status. Anything like the status of the body, anything that depresses, functionality, cognitive function. Uh, if you have pain, if you have, other negative health symptoms, it's like a depression. It's like your body's becoming depressed. It's slowed down. Your metabolism slows down. That's still a depressive state relative to what your body could be like if it's at 100% maximum efficiency, which you can't really attain. But either way, the key is like why I bring up exercise is pivotal, because exercise keeps the engine running. You have an engine just like the body, all the components working together. And when I exercised consistently, I was at the peak of my energy. I felt great. And the thing is when you feel great, when you're boosting energy, when you're increasing this, it every other facet of life becomes magnified, like in positive or the positive areas, and the negative kind of collapses. So it basically keeps your mental energy good. It boosts your circulation. It gets rid of inflammation. It helps your body detoxify better. Helps you balance hormones. All these areas, a function of depression is comprised of, or depression is a function of hormone levels. It's a function of, like circulation levels, oxygen uptake in the brain. It's a function of, just all the inflammation markers, just conditions. Like if you have health conditions, that's going to impact your mood. So the key, and then, when you exercise, you also get endorphins, which eliminates pain. And anytime you have pain, that can cause a vicious cycle and make you kind of deter you from doing anything. And then when you lose motivation, you don't want to do, you start getting tired. And then because you get tired, because essentially motivation and energy coincide together. So when you have motivation, it kind of gives you this reward feedback. You get a boost. But now, what if you can't get that reward feedback? What if your body's, you got inflammation going on, and you're starting to break the disconnect. You're starting to have the disconnection between your neural synapse, and then that's causing you to essentially go into a dysphoric state where your brain cannot make the connections. It may not only make the connections, within like your thoughts and your ideas, that are generating, it's getting closed off. I like to think of it like a node, like a thermal energy. You have conductivity. If you have high thermal conductivity, the nodes usually become closer together. The energy, the translation between nodes is potentiated, but also because they're closer together, it can translate the energy between nodes, and then it goes, and that's why but when you have an insulative structure, the nodes become further apart, and energy is not be able to transfer between the nodes. Same with the current neurotransmitter connections. If you have detoxification or toxicity within the body, it causes inflammation within, possibly within the brain, breaks the connections over time, and therefore reduces memory. And you start, and then that can cause a depression. It causes your mindset to become negative. It can cause, multiple different things that happen. So depression is a function of all these areas, and you want your health to be in optimal condition because that eliminates all these other areas, that could potentially drag you down. And there's always going to be the element of the external factors that are. It's of course depression is biological as well, but there's some minor influence due to external factors. Of course, even stress. Like if you have a stressful event, it's going to potentiate the risk of depression. So you want to build resistance to stress, and therefore you want to increase the adrenal gland function. And I always recommend trying to, of course, exercise is key. It prevents increases resistance to stress. Other adaptogens could be good, like ashwagandha, just in the beginning stages, to kind of get your adrenal glands functioning. It's always good to have B vitamins. It's always good to have a varied diet. It's always good to have plenty of antioxidants, flavonoids, cruciferous, vegetables. And I also mentioned sunlight because sunlight not only increases vitamin D, which helps hormone levels and helps utilization of cholesterol, and and that it can regulate the mood function as well. But also vitamin D is good for bone density and other areas, and it also sunlight stimulates the optic nerve in the eye, which actually stimulates the brain, which the brain is a master organ of all the glands, the glandular system. So the brain allows the functionality and efficiency to increase within the whole body. So therefore it causes the mood to increase, because you feel great, you feel better, everything's running more optimally. You're getting to a point just like when you take, alcohol, stuff like that, you want to reach this high because this high is something that you haven't attained before, and you're trying to push it higher and higher by increasing the dose. And then eventually what ends up happening is because the toxicity builds up, you're not able to get that to that limit anymore. So you have to keep increasing the dose to somehow try to attain that. But then you're breaking the you're causing more toxicity and therefore inflammation, and therefore you may cause the potentiate the disconnection between all the neurotransmitters, and then you may even cause desensitization and insensitivity, just like diabetes, the state of diabetes with insulin resistance, and therefore you're going to reach a state of dysphoria. So the key, in my opinion, is it's critical to exercise daily. I used to do 500 push-ups a day. Of course, it wasn't overnight. I built myself up, and I felt amazing. And the key is like don't worry so much as stress about overtraining. Like as long as you don't want to go too long or push your body like exercise for like 2 hours, 3 hours. It's not needed. You want to have like rigorous exercise, short duration, and kind of not. The thing is, don't stress too much about it. Focus on what your body can. You can listen to your body essentially. Once you listen to your body, you kind of know where the moderation range that you need to attain. But you can bring that. Increase it over time. Think about why marathon runners are able to go such long distances, because they progressively build up stamina. They progressively build up endurance. They don't do it overnight. Their body's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Of course, there's limitation when you reach a certain age. So you got to kind of have that awareness where things are status, when you need to kind of mitigate things or slow things down a little bit, and try to optimize everything. So that's just my viewpoint. I believe these two areas are very important, and they're and essentially they're free. So why not just start your day, just try to get sunlight every day if you can, and try to exercise frequently. And I think that's the best way. Even if you're in pain, and even if all these negative outcomes are happening, you have to just make one little baby step, and then eventually it builds up. And progression's not going to be immediate. It's not instantaneous. It's always going to be maybe slow progression initially with depression, especially. And just do that, and it will work out eventually. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.